watch my minutes at times, but we also need to win ball games as well. So I feel pretty good. I don't feel like that I'm playing 37 minutes a game or whatever. And it's also not the record for me. So my average season, we average 42 and a half for a whole season. So I even got a most minutes for the season plaque at my house. You didn't even know they gave those out, did you?
A plaque. All right. Well, LeBron's 36.9 minutes per game are on pace to be the third most in a player's age 37 season or older, trailing only Karl Malone and Michael Jordan from the early 2000s. So LeBron's 28.6 points per game are 5 more than anybody has ever averaged at this age. So if we're talking about LeBron, we have to bring in senior writer and host of the Hoop Collective podcast, Brian Windhorst. So, Windy, what LeBron is doing right now, do you think that's sustainable?
You know, Malika, I've been asking that question for a decade now, and his answer has always been the same. I know my body better than anybody else, and I will do what I think I can do. You could argue that the injuries he's had since he's been in LA, that groin injury and the abdominal injury, potentially could be related to overwork. But LeBron believes that he knows what he's doing. He's going to continue to do this. And what he said is important there. Even though these games are against teams like the Kings, they are must-win games for the Lakers. Because if you look at their schedule coming up, they have got a brutal rest of this month, especially the back half of this month. They've got a road trip out east where they are going to probably take some losses. And that means the games against the Kings, and they play them again coming up in a few days. Games against the Pacers. They have the Hawks, who are really scuffling coming in. They got to win those games because they have kicked away some games early in the season, and they know they're not going to have Anthony Davis. So when they get a winnable game at home and LeBron James can smell a victory, he's got to take it. And that's why he played so hard in the fourth quarter last night, and I expect him to continue to do so.
Absolutely. Richard, do you think that this is a sustainable load for him?
I think it's sustainable, but this is why they brought in Russell Westbrook, is so that you didn't have to do this type of load.
Sure.
You want to kind of balance him and Anthony Davis. Obviously, Anthony Davis is out. But at the end of the day, if LeBron is having to put forth a heroic effort against the Kings in the fourth quarter to get a victory at home, there are still problems in LA. They have not figured it out. We can talk about how great he is. We can talk about his numbers. But ultimately, they are still not playing quality basketball.
Well, and that's when it comes to, Perk,
Thank
you good?
Wow.
You're saying you're agreeing? Are you sure?
No. Yes, I'm agreeing with RJ because, look, the Lakers their team is constructed for one reason and one reason only, and that's to win a championship. But you know what I will say? I want to say this real quick. LeBron James is actually delivering a message, in my opinion, to Anthony Davis and showing him that this is how you play the center position because LeBron is embracing it with open arms. It looked like he's having great joy playing the center position, rolling to the basket, setting screens, anchoring the defense, talking the coverages. And so what he's saying is that, hey, look, I'm going to show you how to embrace it. So when you come back, I want that same energy out of you.
Doing what needs to be done so his teammates will do the same.
Boy, it sounds like buyers, Malika. As I talk to people around the league, the Cavs are one of the most active teams. They're talking to 3 or 4 different teams about scenarios. They want perimeter players. They want guards. They've obviously had Ricky Rubio and Colin Sexton out for the year. And they've got Rubio's contract now, $16 million. And they have a couple of valuable draft picks. They've got their first-round pick this year if they want to move it. Plus, they have the Houston Rockets second-round pick and the San Antonio Spurs second-round pick. You package those together with that Rubio contract, you may be able to find some help on the perimeter for this year. So the Cavs are being very active. I would almost guarantee that they're going to make deals beyond what they just did for Rajon Rondo.
Okay, so then let's move to the West, to the Lakers. You're hearing that the Lakers are making calls, but what exactly are they looking to do here?
Yeah, so they already offloaded a player in Rondo to create a roster spot, and they are looking to do more of that, Malika. From teams that I've talked to, they are out there with LeBron starting at center and eventually getting Anthony Davis back. They are looking to move DeAndre Jordan, not necessarily for another player, but to move him so that they can open up a roster spot. Kent Bazemore is another player that they've been willing to talk about in talking to some other teams. And I think, again, their goal is open up a roster spot. The Rondo move looks like it was going to be designed for Stanley Johnson to fill, but they may look in the buyout market for another player or two. They're trying to figure out how to do that.
So from east to west, let's go back east because we saved a little bit of fireworks for last. I want to share some sound from Hawks GM Travis Schlenk, who was not in a very good mood yesterday morning. So take a listen.
Maybe it wasn't such a great idea to bring everybody back. Like that's on me. And that's what, we have a few weeks here before the trade deadline. That's what I need to figure out. As you mentioned, it's, there's only 2 times we can really make changes here, right? The draft, free agency, and the trade deadline. And, it's my responsibility to put a product on the floor that can win. And right now I'm questioning whether or not I've done that. And maybe I need to lower my expectations for this team.
So, kind of went a little bit scorched earth there. Brian, what was the reaction around the league to those comments?
Well, the initial reaction when people heard it was, Travis, no, stop. What are you doing? Don't do that. You're saying the stuff but that should stay private out loud. But I think this is a signal to the league that the Hawks are going to be open for business. They spent over $400 million to keep this core team together last offseason. And there are certain guys on their roster who are going to be untouchable. But the guy you got to keep an eye on is going to be Cam Reddish. That's a guy who has had some ups and downs in his career, has had some great games this year. Certainly if you're looking for a good young player, Cam Reddish could be your guy. And he's also due a contract extension. And I don't know if the Hawks can spend much more money. So I would look for possibly a shakeup involving Reddish. They could talk with some other players. I think they're looking to attach Solomon Hill to a deal so they could potentially get something more back. Danilo Gallinari maybe as well. But I would say that the Hawks are a team that's likely to do something as they continue to underachieve.
Well, especially because the last time I sat down with Trae Young, he said, I'm not going to be satisfied until we bring a championship to Atlanta. They set a high bar last season, and they're looking to avenge what happened at the end of it. And so the decision is going to be, is this current roster as constructed, as we just heard Travis Schlenk pontificate about, is it going to be one that we can win with moving forward? Brian Windhorst, thank you so much for joining the show today. Coming up, we have much more NBA.
It was amazing to have him out there. I just missed his presence around the locker room, his energy, his vibe around the team. His game is just so beautiful and makes the game so much easier for everybody out there. It was amazing to see him out on the floor again. The crowd showed him so much love. Just the game of basketball is happy to have him back.
I've had a lot of debuts, but nothing comes close to this one. As a performer, I still get nervous. I settled down closer to the second half. Once I came back out, and I just said, whatever's needed out there, I'm just going to do, and I know everyone's going to follow suit like they've been doing all season. Being out of the game for 8 months and coming back in, it meant a little bit more.
So the Nets improved to 12-3 over the last 2 seasons, including the playoffs when Durant, Harden, and Irving all play. And they were certainly at their best with the trio together last night, outscoring the Pacers by 16 in the 17 minutes with all 3 stars on the floor. So Big Perk is joining us now. Hello, my friend. Thank you for being here. But Perk, when you have a Hall of Famer on the show, you got to start with the Hall of Famer. With all due respect, Big Perk. So, Mr. Wilbon, what was your biggest takeaway from Kyrie's debut last night?
It came post-game. Did you see the smile on Kevin Durant's face? Remember what he was like 2 losses ago?
Calling out his team.
He called out his team. He was understandably upset. They're not supposed to be losing 3 games in a row. And they got handled in a couple of those games. So the takeaway comes post-game when we see Kevin Durant in the demeanor that we presumed all season he and James and Kyrie would be in. And again, Kyrie supplied that. He's coming along at a time in which they definitely need all that he can offer them.
Well, and I saw Kevin Durant jump in on Kyrie Irving's post-game and say, hey, welcome, some expletives, back. He is back. Perk, what was your biggest takeaway?
Well, it was a lot, but the word trust comes to mind. And I had to ask myself, 3 weeks ago when they broke the news on Kyrie Irving, coming back and is only going to play part-time, I said, well, what made the Brooklyn Nets have a change of heart? And what made them have a change of heart was that they thought they would be okay with just Kevin Durant and James Harden. And then they started to realize that Kevin Durant was playing a lot of minutes, more minutes than they would have liked him to, and that James Harden was actually being inconsistent. So all of a sudden, you need that security like we saw last night. And I know it's a sample size, but it goes back to what I said yesterday when I said that on the road, for the long haul in the playoffs, you need that other superstar that's going to take that pressure off of everybody else, that's capable of helping you come back when you're down double figures, because we know the role players can't step up. So last night what we saw was what? KD and Kyrie take over the game when it matters the most. And that's why you saw the big old smile on Kevin Durant's face, because he knows I need Kyrie. He's that killer. He has that instinct. He's that guy I need to go to war with that's going to help me.
Perk, I know Christmas Day, we sat together on the set in New York, and you were starting to worry that really they could take a downturn if they didn't get something. Did you see all of the something you needed to see last night?
I did. It just brought a different. You could tell it was different energy just throughout, and people were asking, "How's the chemistry going to be? Are they going to be okay with it?" And I think the Brooklyn Nets did the right decision from the front office to Steve Nash by bringing them in right now, so that the team could get adjusted for only having Kyrie, playing on road games. Now, Malika and Wilborn, let me tell you what I think is going to happen. Kyrie actually had a big smile on his face last night as well, right? I think Kyrie is going to say, you know what? Hey, man, I just can't play road games. I want to play all of the games. See, what happens is when you're away from the game of basketball, all of a sudden you start to notice, you start to say, you know what? I got a different appreciation for it. And I think when we heard Kyrie last night in his post-game interview, that's what we saw. So I wouldn't be surprised if it make another turn where Kyrie probably get the vaccination and then he comes in, the Nets have him full time.
Well, and Kyrie Irving was asked about that, and he said that I'm going to take it day by day. But Wilbon, for you, are you already looking towards, all right, in the playoffs, when it's Game 7, if it's on the road, what's the situation going to be? Or are you happy sitting in this moment of, all right, let's see what the Nets can get now with an injection of Kyrie?
I'm there now, Malika, but as Perk said, again, this goes back, we started talking about this a lot, at least off camera too on Christmas Day. And one thing that Perk and Jalen said that was really important, knowing locker room situations and peer pressure, was he's going to be with these guys every day, and they're going to influence him as much as he influences them on the court. And so I'm kind of already there. I believe Perk's instincts that he's there every day. He's not going to want to not be there. So what? He going to play 2 big road games. They could get on a roll, and all of a sudden somebody's coming in to town, and he's not going to miss that and want to be a part of that. I think by the time we get to the playoffs, and I don't have any intel, I just think that it's very likely to me that he will have gone there. Of course he does. This is the profession he has chosen. So why choose not to do it for that reason?
Well, and in another no surprise here, the New York tabloids, they were all over Kyrie's debut. So just here's a look at the back page of the Post. The headline, shot in the arm, Kyrie boosts the Nets. I see what you did there. In a debut as a part-timer, and part-timer indeed, because Brooklyn's next 2 games, they're at home before hitting the road on Monday in Portland, Wednesday in Chicago. And
big
you
game.
can see that one on ESPN. And then there was this man. There was Lance Stephenson, because Kyrie wasn't the only one to return last night. Lance Stephenson played in his first game as a Pacer. And, I mean, when I saw how many points he scored, 30, 20 in the first quarter, I did a double take, Michael Wilbon.
We all did last night, Malika. That, of course, nobody apparently, I say apparently because this is a stat that I still can't believe, has ever come off the bench and scored 20 points in a quarter, first quarter. I mean, his nickname, one of the great nicknames which nobody knows is Born Ready. Now, we don't know what the reference was to Born Ready for a whole lot of stuff, but Born Ready certainly applies to last night. Lance Stephenson, who people hadn't thought about in what? 5, 7 years,
Since
maybe
he was
longer.
Blowing in people's ears.
Yeah.
Right, Perk?
Right, but it's something about Indiana and Lance Stephenson. It's something about that whole connection. Like, you could just feel it. Like, he could feel it. The fans embrace him with open arms. But here's the thing that I have to say about Lance Stephenson. Lance Stephenson has been out the league for about 2.5, 3 years almost.
Seems like longer.
And it's no reason that Well, but it's no reason that he shouldn't be in the league. And I think, sometimes this is where, analytics and that 100, whatever, per 100 possessions, all this stuff start coming in. And this is when guys, like Lance Stevens get the short end of the stick. Vets matter. Vets matter. Now, again, you have to realize and you have to humble yourself as well, like we saw Melo do, and they coming from a franchise guy to taking a lesser role. But at the end of the day, when you see guys like this go out there and show the world that they still got it, it's a beautiful thing to watch.
Well, it was the first time that he was in a Pacers uniform since 2018, April 10th, 2018.
He just looked like he had so much bounce.
Well, because
he had
was
so much
born
energy.
ready, Wilbon.
Born ready.
Because he
Here we
was
go.
born ready.
That's so.
You know who else was born ready? Clay and 6. So way back on December 10th, we did a segment with you, Mr. Perk. Big perks, big list of big men. Do you remember what was on your list?
Absolutely. That's like asking me if I got a pair of Crocs on my feet right now. Hell yeah, I remember my list. I had Jokic, I had Embiid, and I had Rudy Gobert, okay?
Rudy
and I'm
Gobert
sticking with that list, Malika. You know what it is. Yes, it is.
You've
And I
been
know you about
wavering
to
a
ask
whole
me.
lot lately. You've been wavering on MVP. It was Kevin Durant, then it was Ja, and then it was going back and forth. So I just wanted to make sure that you stood by it.
Malika, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't
Well,
do that. Don't
Richard's
fall
not
into,
here.
Don't make,
Richard's
don't
not
fall
here,
into,
and I promised
that's what I was
him.
about to say.
I promised
don't do that.
him. Michael Wilbon, do you agree with Perk's list there?
Yeah. I will say this. I'm wavering a little bit, only in this way, Perk. The margin, okay, that Jokic has over Embiid, it's getting smaller. If you look at Philadelphia right now, and they still have yet to figure out what they're doing with Ben, Philadelphia's starting to rise. Look, they can get back in that top 4, which is where they need to be in the East. And for a while, they were struggling. They were below 500. And Embiid is precipitating that. Embiid is the reason they have won some of these games. They're not scared of Brooklyn either, by the way. We saw that a few nights ago. So I think it's narrowing, but I would still put Jokic by the thinnest of margins ahead of Embiid. Yeah, and then I'd go with Gobert after that.
Well, if I remember correctly, DeAndre Ayton was like hanging on the outside at 4th when we did this segment last time. Where is he for you guys now?
Well, I mean, he's been out, he's been injured, but he's still right there. I mean, because, the way he's been playing when he has been in the lineup, he's been a guy that you could count on to be a double type guy. But, Wilborn, to your point about Embiid, people fail to realize, or we fail to mention, that the 76ers have battled a lot this season for as injuries, being out with guys, especially when they hit that West Coast swing early in the season. They didn't have a lot of their guys. So for them to be 3 or 4 games above 500 right now on a 5-game winning streak is beyond impressive. And Joel Embiid, I mean, offensively, when you talk about skill-wise, I mean, he's almost like falling in the conversation with Kevin Durant, where he really has 0 flaws in his game.
Well, and when Doc Rivers, when I spoke to him about that West Coast swing, he called that a survivor's trip. It wasn't fun. It wasn't pretty. It was about surviving, but also training up some of those young guys to be able to step up when Joel was back in this sort of form, Mike Wilbon.
Yes, and remember, this sort of form, we can refer to the early season start. Weren't they 8-2? The Sixers to start, and then all those absences, right?
Danny Green,
injuries, illness, all of that. They beat the Bulls twice. All right, the number 1 seed right now in the Eastern Conference, they beat them twice. I believe they beat them back-to-back, not nights, but games. And Embiid was informed then. They hit that. That was a speed bump that really threw them off for an extended period. But again, there's so much time left in the season, even though we're nearing the halfway point. If Embiid is healthy and on the court, and if Philadelphia does something, Perk, we still presume they're going to get something for Ben Simmons by the trade deadline. I know Daryl Morey told us to buckle in. It could take years. I don't know that any of us are buying that.
Right.
So if they get Philadelphia is in a fairly good place right now. We'd like to see our man Doc Rivers back on the court and out of protocol. I guess that's going to happen shortly. But they're in a pretty good place. It is because primarily of Embiid.
Right. Primarily because of a great big man and Perk's big man list holding up, but we're going to check back in on that coming up on NBA Today on a night. How cool was that to listen to that in Steph's voice? I mean, I had goosebumps I think the entire world is ready, the basketball world certainly, to see Klay Thompson back on the court. So back here with Kendrick Perkins and Michael Wilbon, Golden State is tied with Phoenix for the best record in the NBA, but according to Vegas, Brooklyn still has the best odds to win a championship. But when Klay comes back, Michael Wilbon, do you think that catapults the Warriors to the favorite to win it all?
I think the Warriors already are. And I've thought that for a few weeks now. I mean, just watching this first third of the season and maybe a little bit beyond now, I think the Warriors are that. We're talking about best team. I don't care about big threes and all that. Now, you are adding, with reasonable expectations, Malika, for me, you're adding a top 75 player. I voted him of the top 75. I was one of those panelists. But I don't think we're not going to see Klay Thompson come back and average 20 points a game and be taking on the other team's best wing offensive player. I don't think we're going to see that right away. What are the reasonable expectations? And Perk can speak to that better than I can. But if we talked about this last night, 75-80% of Klay Thompson, he is going to help them in a major way. Just the mood. Mm-hmm. We know what Draymond and Steph think of this, of adding Klay and Andre Iguodala. They've played with him. They've won multiple titles with him. So I think the Warriors are the favorite right now and will continue to be the favorite. And if we get to that point with, second-seeded Brooklyn at this point, then we can address
Bulls,
that.
Right?
Behind the Bulls.
Absolutely. So for me, when we're talking about percentages, Big Perk, when we are having that discussion of what Klay needs to be to come back for the Warriors to be the favorite, to me, it's not on the offensive end that we're talking about. We've seen him hit, 24 threes in a row. We've seen him dunk to complete his pregame warm-ups or his warm-ups as he's going through this process. But Klay is kind of an underrated defender. The Warriors used to put him on some of the best players out there on the defensive end. So do you believe that when Klay comes back, the Warriors are the favorites to win, Big Perk?
You know what? It's hard, and I know you just got on me about, going all over the place for us the MVP conversation, but it's the same right now for us who's the favorite. Like, you can look up the Bulls, and the Bulls are playing exceptional basketball, the Bucks, the Jazz. It's a list of teams, but if I had to give a slight edge to anybody, it would be the Warriors. Here's the thing about Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson is so special, and the reason that we're seeing Steph Curry struggle right now is because he really, really missed Klay. See, if Klay is on the floor, all of a sudden teams can't pull out those special defense and put on Steph Curry because now you have to put the same emphasis on Klay Thompson. And now you take the pressure off of Steph Curry as well. So Klay Thompson, like Wilbon just said, just being on the floor, just being a decoy helps everybody else, including Steph Curry. But here it is. We don't know what's going to happen at the trade deadline or whatever the case may be. We still haven't seen Phoenix healthy for an extended period of time. We can't disrespect them. They did represent the West in the finals last year. But right now it's kind of like, you know what? This is the first time in a long time that I don't really have a clear-cut favorite, but if I had to give the slight edge right now, it would be the Golden State.
Well, the secret sauce that Golden State has, that the Bucks have, by the way, because they should still be included in that conversation, that the Bulls, that the Brooklyn Nets don't necessarily have, is that camaraderie that's been built over years with the same players, those sorts of repetitions. And that's something that you can't really measure, right? And so that's something that those two teams have, that when I'm looking around, it's like...
You are being so Bay Area biased today. I see it all
it's coming
up
through,
on
Perk,
the
isn't
whole
it?
story.
It's
You
coming
see it,
right
you see it, Wilbon? You see it, Wilbon?
DeMar, and thank goodness we have DeMar DeRozan on our show because we are now joined by the four-time All-Star Bulls guard. Welcome to NBA Today, DeMar.
Thank you for having me.
We're excited to have you, but we need to start with some of the magic that we just saw because you hit 2 game winners in back-to-back games. And by the way, it's not like those games were tied. You were trailing in both games. So be honest. Do you have a favorite?
Probably the second one for it being the next night, for sure. I think the second one. It was tough. Kuz had just hit a big 3 before that. So for us to pull that one out, it was crazy being on a back-to-back night.
I don't think I could have kept a calm face like that. I think both of my hands would have been in the air. I would have been running around the arena for several minutes. But as a team, you all have been on fire this season. And there was a time that you said you might end up with the Lakers or things could have shaken out a little bit differently. But when you went to the Bulls, what were your expectations of what this team could be?
I know we'd be great. I felt like we was going to be able to take some time. We was going to turn around probably around this point. But we first day of training camp, we was locked in, no setbacks. We all was on the same page. And you got to give credit to the coaching staff, putting us in a great position of understanding each other, play calling, everything. And we just jumped out the gate and been balling out.
Even when you all were missing players, when folks were going in and out of COVID protocols, you guys kept afloat, but there were a lot of critics out there, particularly around your fit with Chicago when it was first announced that that's where you were going. And for me personally, I know I say, I'm not going to look at Twitter or whatever the case may be, but I see it. I kind of can't help it, right? So what sort of fuel did maybe proving people wrong add for you?
As a competitor, you always want to beat anybody in anything that they say you can't do. I remember being a kid, when you hear somebody say you can't do something, you want to go out there and do it and prove it wrong. I think that's just a motivational factor that you could use. And, I definitely seen it. My teammates seen it. And we took it personally. We let our game speak for itself. We're not too outspoken. We go out there on the court and we're going to compete with the naysayers and whoever we're playing against.
Has that been a point of bonding for all of you? Because I know that for Lonzo Ball, for Zach LaVine, there have been points in their careers where folks said, well, I don't know if they can, whatever the end of that sentence may be.
Yeah, I think that's what makes our team unique. On down the line, all our guys had a chip on their shoulder, of hearing all that, what you just said, and all these guys deserve every success that we're getting, from Boots to Zoe to Zach. All these guys has been through it, and we at a point now to where we're playing with that chip on our shoulder and we all in it together and it shows.
What do you think the ceiling is for the Bulls this year?
Everything. We're ceiling, the goal is championship. We're not going to cut ourselves short. This is an opportunity that we can take advantage of. We don't take it lightly. We understand what's at stakes. We respect all the teams, the top, the conference, everything. But we're going to go out there and compete every single night. We ain't going to cut ourselves short. We feel like we can play with anybody, and the goal is compete for a championship.
You go out and compete every night. The other night, you missed a few free throws in a game against the Magic, and you won. But afterward, you still went out to the court, and you shot another 250 free throws. And to me, that had Kobe mentality written all over it. I know you're superstitious, but can you walk us through that postgame a little bit?
One, I was mad. In the first half, I missed a couple free throws. Then the way I ended the game, I missed a couple more free throws. I hate missing free throws. I hate it. I hate it with a passion. I wasn't going to feel comfortable leaving the arena until I got some extra shots up. So I stayed afterwards. Either I was going to go to a practice facility, or I was going to stay at the arena, but I was going to figure out a way to, just get back in the gym and shoot some free throws.
That perfectionism, that going back over things, is that something that permeates through this team as you all are trying to, like you said, win a championship?
Most definitely. Not one guy on this team, not one coach on this team is satisfied with anything. Everybody come in here and work their butt off every single day on any minute thing you can think of, honestly. And that's just the team that we have, the coaching staff that we have. We always consistently trying to find ways to be better, whether we're on a win streak or not. We're figuring out how we could be better the next practice, the next game.
By the way, before we let you go, the first pass of fan all-star voting is in, and you lead all guards in the Eastern Conference. Congratulations.
Thank you, and thank the fans.
Yeah, I mean, what would it mean to you to be back in the all-star game, let alone you're in the MVP conversation this year?
Being in the all-star game is definitely always an honor, especially when the fans vote you in. It's a beyond humbling. It's an honor that the fans want to see you in there. I'll be ecstatic, and I can't even put in words. Just being mentioned in MVP conversation, it's all crazy. I try to take it in day by day. Share this moment with my teammates. It's crazy. Without them, I wouldn't even be in this position that I'm in. So I got to give all the credit to my teammates. They push me every single day to even get to this point.
Well, you all have certainly been fun to watch this year, and we will be on the lookout because when you guys are down and the ball is in your hands, I don't think anybody is taking you lightly, at least not anymore, DeMar. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Appreciate you.
So DeRozan's Bulls, they hold a game-and-a-half lead over the Nets for the best record in the Eastern Conference. And this is the latest into the season that Chicago has held the conference's top seed since finishing as number 1 in the 2011-2012 season. So we're talking about the Bulls. I'm thrilled to discuss the Bulls with our resident expert, our historian, our OG, Mr. Michael Wilbon. So we just heard DeMar DeRozan say that he feels the ceiling for this team is a championship. Matt Barnes said that on the show earlier this week. But being realistic, the trade deadline is coming up here. What pieces do they still need for that to come to fruition here?
One piece, size. I mean, we've seen the Bulls win a couple of those games. You know why they were behind against Indiana and Washington? Because they were getting beat inside badly, particularly offensive rebounds, giving those up to Indiana and Washington. They need some size. And so people who follow this team fanatically, and I've done that for, a half century, you're looking at the one piece they need, and it's some size. It's somebody who inside can hold his own, particularly defensively in April. You talk about playoff series against the likes of the Bucks or playing somebody like Clint Capella, you're going to have some size to match that. They seem to have everything else, including the right spirit, this marriage between DeRozan and Zach LaVine, which I heard Malika scouts preseason, it was somewhere between doom and maybe it'll work out okay and they'll get the 7 spot. And now it's a marriage that looks blissful, right? I mean, those two guys, I mean, as great as DeRozan has been, and he's been thrust into the spotlight even deeper because of those 2 shots, those 2 buzzer beaters, Zach LaVine has been great.
Not just a volume scorer.
Great.
Right.
That's right. And so the 2 of them together are the stars, the closers, and they have every single piece with healthy around them, even getting a guy like Kobe White back. Caruso's been out for a couple of weeks. They're going to get him back. Vooch, who nobody's talked about, I mean, he could be sort of an all-star backup as a big man, as a center in the East. So they've got that going, and Billy Donovan has been there. He's been in big series. He knows how to bring a team along. They seem to have everything. Now, it still goes through Milwaukee. It still goes the path through the Eastern Conference title, goes through a place 90 miles up the road, a little bit on I-94, and the Nets, as we've chronicled. But the Bulls are go.
Yes, sir.
And you know the Nets are not going to want to be swept in a season series by a Bulls team that they could meet somewhere down the line. But that's the fact that the Bulls are in these discussions.
Right.
And they haven't been a number 1 seed. That was the season following Derrick Rose's